The year is 2021. China makes up 42% of the share of total US imports. That's nearly 7 times as many as the second largest supplier to the US. But did you know that there's actually another country quickly chasing China as the current global trading leader? You won't want to miss this webinar as we share with you the most important trends that you need to know about global trade in 2021. Let's get started.
Joining us to discuss Jungle Scout's 2021 Global Imports Report is Leslie Tumulan, a Jungle Scout expert who works with researchers to examine industry trends and data. Leslie, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Leslie, can you tell us a little bit more about the report and what readers can expect to learn inside of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the 2021 Global Imports Report, you'll find exclusive insights into global trade to the U.S. between 2015 and the first half of 2021. The report examines 237 countries and all industries. So in it, you'll find import stats by country and industry, how U.S. reliance on international trade has shifted since COVID-19, and where different products are sourced worldwide, as well as where to find the best suppliers by industry.
Great, so make sure to download your own copy of this report with the link in the video description below.
Great, so now let's dive on into the report. We'll begin with arguably the hardest part of starting an Amazon business, which is figuring out where to find suppliers to source your product and how to get it shipped into the US. So Leslie, are there any new trends related to product sourcing that you can tell us about?
Yeah, so by now, I'm sure you've heard and talked about, the pros and cons of sourcing from China. They import the most products into the United States more than any other country worldwide. However, while China currently leads, it's important to be aware of the fact that trade from India is actually growing at a much faster rate. So to illustrate this, compared to early 2020, India's share of US imports is growing faster than any other country by an increase of 32%. Second on this list is Vietnam, growing their share by 14%, followed by Italy at 12%. And then in contrast, China has only increased their share by less than 1%.
That's great. So Leslie, for people looking to source products, what can you tell us about where all these imports are currently coming from?
Yeah, so far in 2021, we're seeing the trade landscape continue to be dominated by a limited number of countries. So there's about 10 countries on the list that contribute 72% of the total US imports. However, it's no secret that by a wide margin, China continues to maintain its position as the current global trading leader. So with over 3 million recorded shipments, China makes up over 2/5 of the share of total US imports, which is a 35% difference from the second largest supplier, which is Vietnam.
Okay, yeah, I figured that China was still leading in that regard, but as we touched on earlier, we know in the past year there's actually been a few other countries growing their share of US imports at a much faster rate than China. And so with that in mind, do you think that there's any way that one of these countries eventually catches up to China, or is that gap just too big to close?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the short term, I'd like to say that gap is probably too big to close.
Yeah.
But in the long term, we could start to see a little bit of a shift. So looking at this past year, these are the top countries that have increased their share of US imports. It's interesting to note that while China has only grown their share by less than 1%, they still make up about 42% of all US imports. In fact, while there's been a handful of other countries growing at a faster rate, no other nation has yet to even exceed 5% share of total US imports. So even more impressive for China is that they've maintained around 40% share of US imports every year for the past 6 years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So even though China isn't growing as fast as some of these other countries are, it's safe to say the gap between China and the next country is still pretty wide.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Great. Now, Leslie, is there anything in this report about categories? I think a ton of sellers would be really interested to know how their category ranks in terms of demand. So just curious to know if there's anything in here relating to categories.
Yeah, so in this report, we found that there are 3 categories currently making up about 45% of all US imports. Right now, machinery and electrical is at the top with nearly 1.5 million recorded imports, followed by the miscellaneous category and then textiles. Now, while these are the top 3 categories imported to the US this year, we've seen actually a few notable fluctuations in certain categories. Compared to last year, there's been a noticeable uptick in a share of the miscellaneous and stone and glass categories. On the other side of the spectrum, however, the textiles category has decreased in share by 9% in early 2021, which follows a 7% decrease in the category from 2020. One category that hasn't seen too much change is one right at the top, so machinery and electrical. In the past 5 years, this category has consistently made up nearly 1/5 of total US imports.
And so to give people some context of or examples of products in that category, these would be things like household appliances, batteries, calculators, or even speakers.
Yeah, exactly. So something to keep in mind is that with most countries, they have specialized exports just based on the raw materials that are grown or built in that country. So included in this report is a breakdown of the top countries that supply products by category. For example, you may be looking to sell animal-related products, and we'll find that China, Vietnam, and Australia round off the top 3 countries that produce those types of products. There's a ton of other categories in this report, so make sure you check it out for yourself with the link down in the description.
Great. Now, what stands out to you, Leslie, as the biggest takeaway from this report that you can tell us about?
Yeah, so while there's a ton of important takeaways from this report, I think the one that stands out the most is seeing the total number of imports to the US in the first half of 2021. So for the first half of 2021, US imports have exceeded 7.5 million, marking a 33% year-over-year increase where total imports were just 5.6 million. So in fact, by the end of this year, US imports are projected to surpass 16 million, marking a 20% year-over-year increase.
Okay, wow. So that's a pretty large increase from last year. So I'm assuming that the consumer demand for all of these imported products has increased as well. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's just been more demand for products to be sold and to be consumed. So to put this year's growth into perspective, since 2015, overall imports from the US have averaged nearly 12 million per year. And again in 2021, we're projected to surpass around 16 million imports. So in the span of 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, total imports for the US rose about 23%. But when you look at this year, we're projected to see a 20% increase from 2020.
Awesome. Well, before we let you go, Leslie, I'm curious to know now about COVID-19 in this past year and how that's affected global trade.
Yeah, with the ongoing pandemic, it's needless to say that early 2020 was difficult, especially for international commerce. On the bright side, however, the remainder of 2020 into early this year shows surprising growth for the volume of US imports. Aligning with trends since 2015, the volume of total US imports has steadily grown, with the exception of a small decline in 2019. Alongside growing demand, last year we saw an estimated 9% increase in US maritime imports. So then when you take a look at just the first half of this year, there's been an even greater increase compared to the first half of last year. So in fact, the number of US imports increased by 1/3 and has already surpassed that of early 2020.
Okay. So it sounds like we're not just returning back to normal now, but we're actually seeing historically high demand for products in the US. Does that sound right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's even interesting when you take a look at Jungle Scout's Consumer Trends Report, and you can see that 23% of consumers said that their overall spending has increased from just Q1 of this year. So people are definitely starting to spend more. And it's interesting that nearly 1/3 of those consumers are also saying that their online spending has increased as well.
Great. Well, I actually think that's a perfect point to end this video on. We just learned that not only is there more demand for products to be sold here in the United States, but that consumers are beginning to spend more of their dollars online than ever before. However, when it comes to Amazon, in the second half of this year, we're starting to see more sellers remain guarded as importers are trying to keep up with this rising demand. With delays in ocean freight, it's becoming very challenging for many countries to import products to the US in a timely fashion. It's trends like these that show why it's more important than ever for Amazon sellers to be informed about the state of global e-commerce. So with the link down in the description, make sure you go ahead and check out our 2021 Global Imports Report.
All right, so now for the next few minutes, Jake and myself will be here live to answer any questions that you might have. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat box below. Leslie, thank you again for joining us today and sharing some valuable nuggets with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Hi everyone, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Now, we're here live for the next few minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So please, if you do have any questions, then drop them in the comment section below. Looks like we're starting to see a couple come in here. What have we got so far, Jake?
Yeah, so first question that came in here is, can you compete if you use local sellers, i.e. Canada or US? Or is it just too hard to compete? Or is it just too hard without enough margin?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think that's one that a lot more people are asking now, just with, for all sorts of different reasons, like in the pandemic, and a lot of sellers at the moment are experiencing really long shipping times as well. So like being able to source locally would make a huge difference. To be honest, I don't know. I feel like in the past, I've talked to a lot of sellers that have tried sourcing products in the US or maybe Canada, and if they've either found it challenging to find products locally sourced, or if they have, there's just such a big price difference versus what they can get from China. So I think it's something that is probably going to be on the rise a little more, particularly like with the delays at the moment. So, you know, if anyone out there that's selling at the moment knows that the shipping delays are just crazy. And so even if something is more expensive in the US, it might be worth it, you know, to speed up the shipping times a lot. So yeah, don't have a definitive answer. I feel like you're gonna see more and more of that. I think it's going to become more popular, but at the moment I would say that, yeah, there is a really huge gap there, and that most people are probably still gonna source from China for a long time to come. And you know, I guess even like as we shared in the presentation, you know, you can see that China's consistently held 40% of the imports into the US, which kind of like speaks to this a lot. Like they're going to probably remain the heavyweight champion for a long time. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Jake.
Yeah, no, I think you said it best there. All right, well, here we have another question here. How can Jungle Scout members get more detailed information about products coming in from a specific country?
Yeah, good question. So probably the best resource that I'd recommend is the Jungle Scout supplier database. So inside of it, you can search for a keyword, or you can put in a specific ASIN. You can put in a company name. So this would be a company in the US that's selling on Amazon, or you can even type in a specific supplier. And what this does is it checks it against US import records, and you can see either discover new suppliers or verify existing suppliers that you might know of or have found elsewhere, verify the shipments that they've sent into the US. Now, in regards to your question, what was it, finding suppliers from a specific country, what I recommend is doing a product search. So you could type in swim mask or yoga mat or whatever it is that the product that you're looking for, and then you'll see all of the suppliers that have sent in that particular product, and then you can go through and kind of like filter by the specific country that you're looking for. And so that is a great way to try to find suppliers outside of China. So if you just kind of omit all of the China listings or look at other countries, you'll see the entries that come from countries other than China or a specific country.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. The supplier database, I think, is your best route there.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, got a question here. It comes from Joe. I've recently started Amazon FBA, and I still find it hard to get a good ROI from wholesale. Is there any advice you can tell Joe about wholesale and getting a better ROI?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, wholesale is not something that I've done personally. I've talked to like a bunch of people that have done it and still do it. I know people that completely do wholesale only, but I think more people that I've spoke to have a combination of wholesale and private label. Generally, like very generally speaking, wholesale will have lower, like smaller profit margins, but it's just easier to get into. You don't have to go through the whole process that you do with private label, creating a brand new product. So typically that is the case with wholesale, that you are gonna find a lower ROI. And I think wholesale has been getting harder and harder as it's gotten easier to sell on Amazon. So, a few years ago, a lot of companies, they would need an Amazon expert like yourself to help them sell on Amazon, and so they would wholesale to you. But now that it's becoming easier and easier, there's more resources on how to sell on Amazon, or maybe they can like hire someone in-house just to look after that. More of these companies are just selling on Amazon directly themselves. So I think wholesale opportunities are becoming a little more scarce, and that might also contribute to why it's harder to get an ROI. So in terms of advice, I'm biased, but I'm definitely a big fan of private label for that reason. Of you can very much more control your profit margins. So you don't have to necessarily jump completely into private label, but I'd suggest maybe supplementing your existing wholesale listings and introducing one or two private label listings, and that and then over time you can decide how you want to balance that out, whether you want to stick to wholesale or whether you want to creep more into private label. But those are my thoughts.
Awesome. I have another question here. This is, does Jungle Scout support suppliers from India? I think this is a very similar answer to the supplier database answer. You can find a ton of suppliers with the supplier database and then track them with the tracker as well. So to answer the question very directly, yes, Jungle Scout does support suppliers from India. And so if you have Jungle Scout membership, make sure you go check out that tool. And yeah, you can search by, there's 4 different ways to search, so you can search for them in many different ways, but you'll see a ton of different suppliers from all the countries, including India.
That's right. The only other note that I'd make there, just to clarify, so we can only see import records into the United States. So for example, we can't see imports that go into India or UK or any other country. So as long as Indian suppliers have shipped into the US, we can definitely show them. But yeah, like Jake said, the entries that you see are from all over the world. All right.
Awesome.
What do we got next?
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so this is a good question here. If you have a company that is not in the US, can you still sell on Amazon in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. So I won't say most, but there are so many sellers, thousands and thousands of sellers that sell in the US from outside of the US. In fact, I started out selling from outside of the US, from Australia, and whilst traveling. So it's definitely possible. You can sell as an individual, but you can also set up a company or an entity in your own country and register an account with that entity. So yes, absolutely. All I'd recommend is if you Google, I think it's like countries that can sell on Amazon, there's like a very small list of countries that they don't allow registering on Amazon US, but it's a very, very small list. So for most people, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Here's an interesting question here. The question is there a way to filter for suppliers that are eco-friendly and eco-friendly only?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say no, not that I'm aware of. You would need to just kind of do your own sort of research. The supplier database will help you come up with or find the supplier's names and some of their details. You would need to go do a search for their website or see if they're on Alibaba or elsewhere, and either vet information there or reach out to them to find out if they are eco-friendly. So that would just require some extra digging.
Yeah, and I've done this myself. So if you just go to their website, typically you can see in their about section if they're eco-friendly or if they produce any eco-friendly products. So if you can find their website, which the supplier database helps you find, then certainly just go to their about section and you can see it there, usually. Okay. All right, so we have a question here.
Yeah, I can give it a shot.
So from Pakistan, hello from Pakistan. What do you see the potential to source products from Pakistan to the US or the UK now and after 2 years ago? So I think the question here is mostly around like sourcing it from Pakistan to the US. Do you have any insights or any idea there of relating to Pakistan?
Yeah, I'd have to like kind of double check, like I guess with the report to kind of see, if it sort of indicates like a rise of sourcing products there. So that I'm not sure. Like I guess still the main takeaway is that China is still by far the heavyweight champion of sourcing products. But yeah, we were seeing countries like India, for instance, that were kind of closing that gap. Or starting to grow quite a bit, but it's probably still going to be a while before you see significant volume from any other country. So I'd say it's probably growing, but it's in the next 2 years it probably won't be super substantial. Yeah, but this is all, I guess, kind of like speculating. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, I was going to say if you have a supplier, a supplier in Pakistan that you trust and maybe it's easier for you to communicate with them. There may be pros and cons of using that supplier, even if it's not traditionally seen in the numbers that they're importing a good amount in comparison to other countries to the US. So I wouldn't necessarily just look at the countries that are importing most of the imports to the US, like China, and say, okay, I need to go find a Chinese importer. But if you can speak especially to these suppliers in Pakistan better, then it may be best to find one. So yeah, certainly do your research there, and you can find a ton of suppliers from Pakistan on the supplier database as well.
All right, let's see, what do we have? Cool, thanks for these questions, everyone. Make sure to keep dropping them in, even if it's not related to sourcing and just selling on Amazon. Yeah. Then yeah, we'll do our best to help you all out. Okay, looks like another question here. Cool.
Yeah, this is a good one. The question here is there any other e-commerce marketplace apart from Alibaba where we can source products from?
Yeah, so another one that comes to mind is just had a mental blank. Globalsources.com is another quite large one. Then that's probably like the other big one that I would say. Again, the supplier database can help you find new suppliers that may not be listed on either of those sites. So cross-referencing with the supplier database is a good way, but I would still go to Alibaba or Global Sources as well. There is one that is a little bit smaller, and it kind of goes back to an earlier question about sourcing outside of China or from a specific country. Locally, what's it called?
Thomasnet.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thomasnet. So Thomasnet is another good one. I think it's mostly just U.S. suppliers.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one as well. And you can also just Google if you want a specific country in particular. You can just Google suppliers for whatever your product is in your country. So just having tailored Google searches is also another great way of finding suppliers.
Yeah, I think when I've done that in the past, I've typically found that specific countries might have their own sort of platform for searching through suppliers, or at least the couple of times that I've done it. So yeah, that's another good one.
That's a good idea there. I know India has a huge marketplace, very similar to Alibaba, and can't recall the name there, but if you start to do these searches where you attach a country at the end of your search query, you'll start to see websites like what Lenny just mentioned.
Perfect.
It's a great question.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so this is a good question here. The question is, I'm a new seller and I'm doing private label. Right now, air shipping is costing a lot and sea shipping is taking 2 months if there's no delay. Do you have any tips, Lenny, for her as a new seller?
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough time whether you're a new seller or an existing seller. Unfortunately, across the board, everyone's kind of facing these challenges. I wish I had any specific tips or secrets or something to kind of share here, but my best advice is just be patient and stick with it. Know that it's not just you that's being targeted. I mean, it obviously sucks because you're just starting out, but unfortunately everyone's experiencing these challenges, and it will pass. You know, this does happen all the time, just through, it's the nature of business and being an entrepreneur, is that there are things out of your control that will affect your business or maybe everyone's business. And yeah, you just need to be incredibly resilient throughout this, and just you know, in this case, be patient, keep moving forward. You will get through this, and like a year or 2 years from now, when we're well beyond this and you've built your business, you'll look back and be glad that you persevered through. So unfortunately, I don't have any actionable tips to share here, but just stick with it because I truly believe that it's going to be worthwhile for you.
Yeah, and maybe just an alternative idea as well. And this is only if you have the capability to do this. Perhaps considering ordering a little bit more inventory to a third-party fulfillment center or a storage center. And so the reasoning there is if you have extra storage somewhere outside of Amazon, you can always fulfill it from one storage unit to the fulfillment center. So that's kind of advanced if you have the means of doing that financially, as well as kind of knowing how that works logistically. But that's just another option. You can get more inventory into wherever you're selling from, or where you're selling. That way you're just shipping it from one place to the next rather than waiting on it to come from the air or sea. So just another idea there, but again, maybe a little more advanced because you'd have to have the means there to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something that we're actually doing with one of our Jungle Creations products, these washable pee pads. We're just ordering in extra now, ordering in, you know, a few thousand units more than we perhaps typically would, just because of all the delays. It's like, let's just get it over into the US, and then we'll kind of store that at another third-party warehouse just to, make use of, if we have to wait a long time, just get as much as we can over here. That's a great point.
Awesome.
Okay. Ooh, it's an interesting one. Cancel on a fair.
Yeah, so Vince asked here, do you think the Canton Fair is still the best place to go in person? Building relationships with vendors is a great value.
Yeah, I think there is still great value there. I don't know if it's even happening this year, and I'm sure it probably didn't happen last year. I did go a few years ago, and it was a great experience. But what I do want to start by saying is that you don't have to go to the Canton Fair or visit China or anything like that in order to be successful. You know, I'm pretty sure even Greg talks about, it was like he was selling for years before he ended up visiting China to begin with. I think that's correct. And yeah, I was selling for a couple of years before I went to China and went to the Canton Fair. It was great because in that visit, I did manage to meet up with an existing supplier that I was working with already, and it was great to have a face-to-face. And like you mentioned there's a lot of value in doing that. But I would just say do it when it makes sense. Don't let it stop you getting started. It's in no way something that should stop you from getting started. You can, you know, do everything over the internet. It's amazing. So take advantage of that. And I would say once your business is growing, you've got a good amount of, you know, revenue coming in, and maybe a couple of products at least, or, you know, when you, like, you know, when the time is right. If you're at the start of your business, I wouldn't be booking a flight to China when you haven't got your first or second, you know, load of inventory in. You know, focus all your money and your efforts there. Then once you're established, yeah, definitely consider it, because I think it will always add value to your business. But as I mentioned, it's not super, you know, urgent upfront.
Awesome. I think this is another great question here. The question is, hey, what would be the best ways to generate reviews on a new listing?
Yeah, do you have any thoughts? I guess we've just been talking about this recently.
Yeah, this is a hot topic, and certainly something we did as well on the $1 million case study with the pee pads here. There's so many ways that you can do this. You can do this organically by lowering your price. making it more attractive for customers to buy and hopefully leave a review. You can certainly use tools. We have a review automation tool here where it automatically sends review requests to every new order that comes in. So if you have a Jungle Scout account, definitely toggle that on. You just have to set it one time and then you forget it. It comes in super handy. If you don't have a Jungle Scout account, you'd have to go through manually, but you still can do that on your orders page. You can request reviews after people place an order and it's successfully shipped to their place. So there's many ways doing it. Obviously, lowering your price is one, but then using a tool or requesting reviews is another great way. I know there's so many other ways. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, probably the other one that I'd mention is the Vine program is really great to get reviews. These are, the top reviewers on Amazon, and you can send up to 30 units of your product for free. So you're giving it away for free, but there's a very high likelihood of receiving reviews from these Vine reviewers. And now is actually a great time to mention that, because I believe I saw some communication that the Vine program, it's actually been a free program for third-party sellers to enroll in the last maybe couple of years. But I think I don't remember the date, maybe it's in October. There is going to be a fee. I can't remember, it's like a couple of $100s or something like that if you enroll products after that date. So if you have an eligible product, I think it needs to be like a fairly new product that doesn't have many reviews. I can't remember the exact criteria, but definitely enroll it now or double check what that date is, because it might be in like a month or so from now. You will have to pay to enroll. And to be clear, even at like a couple $100s, it still is great value. I'm going to continue using that in the future, because you really, when you're launching a product, you just want to do anything and everything to get reviews. So it's still great value, even with a cost. But right now, it's like an absolute steal. So definitely check that one out. And just to reiterate what Jake was mentioning before is Jungle Scout's review automation tool. That one's definitely been a lifesaver. I do remember when that feature first came out, and I did spend some time like going through, and I think there's like 4 or 5 clicks each order, and then you have to like go back to the orders page and click on the next one. And I did that for a little while until we released the review automation feature, which at the start, it would just kind of do like a page at a time, but the way it's set up now is incredible. Again, if you do have a Jungle Scout account, make sure you go into review automation and just turn it on. You don't have to think about it ever again. We're just gonna automate the process of requesting reviews. That's like that simple. And we've seen a lot of sellers that have just had their number of reviews grow ridiculously in a short amount of time, including our own listing as well. So definitely can't speak about the value of that one enough. Cool. All right. This one at the top here is good. So
Question here is, do I have any insurance as a new seller?
Yes. So what I recommend here, go to junglescout.com, go to our blog, and I don't know whether you can like search for an insurance, but Brian Connolly from the Jungle Scout team and also an Amazon seller has a great article there that breaks down all the different types of insurance that you need as an Amazon seller. It goes into great detail, more detail than I can, kind of share. Long story short, yes, you do need insurance once you hit a certain threshold. So you maybe don't necessarily need it when you're first starting out, but it is a great idea once your revenue amount starts to build up. So yeah, definitely check out the Jungle Scout blog on that one. Okay. Let's see. We'll answer a couple more questions before we wrap things up. Yeah, we can take that.
Yeah. All right, so our question here is, how much does a returned product to Amazon cost you as a seller?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that like a dollar amount. I know it does cost you a little bit. I just honestly haven't gone in and like I just haven't bothered to do the calculations. But when I looked into it briefly a while back, my calculations led me to believe that when you by the time like you pay Amazon the FBA fees when the customer orders it, and so you get like the net amount, but then the amount that you end up having to refund is a little bit more than the net amount that you actually received in your balance. So you do lose a little bit. But yeah, I don't know what the amount is. It's like a few percent or like $1 or I guess depending on how you look at it, it's reasonably small if you don't get a lot of returns. If you started getting a lot of returns, that would add up quickly. Fortunately, most of my products haven't had too many returns, so it's a bummer, but it doesn't bother me too much if I'm losing like $1 or so each time. But unfortunately, yeah, I do believe you lose a little bit of money each time. And yeah, I guess that's just like a kind of a casualty of the business, unfortunately. And you just have to do whatever's within your control to provide a great product and a great experience and make sure it's all accurately depicted on your listing, just to do your best to reduce the likelihood of someone returning in the first place.
Awesome. I think we have another good question here. So this question here is, hey guys, can Jungle Scout help to launch the product?
Yeah, that is a great question, and happy to talk about how Jungle Scout can help. So I guess there's like a lot of things involved in the launch, and Jungle Scout is an all-in-one platform to help Amazon sellers. So what does that mean? Of course, we've got product research, but then when you go into launching your product, the very first thing that you need is a great listing. And so Jungle Scout can help you there, beginning with in-depth keyword research. So keywords are how your product is found. You need to have the most relevant keywords with high search volume. So we've got a tool called Keyword Scout, which can find all of those relevant keywords for you. There's a ton of different columns that help you sort through and find the best ones. You then need to build out your listing. We've got a listing builder where you can just easily transfer those keywords into your listing. If you've already created your listing on Seller Central, you can even just sync the changes directly back to Seller Central. And so we can help you build out a really well-optimized listing. That by far is the most important thing before you go forward with any sort of launch strategy. Then when it comes to launching your product, you need sales and you need reviews, typically. Jake mentioned some of the great ways to get sales earlier on. That would just be things like running PPC or perhaps lowering your price or running coupons on Seller Central. But another big part of launching is just capturing as many reviews as you can along the way. And that's where, again, the review automation tool comes into play. So those are probably like the most directly related to launching your product. But of course, once you are launching and have launched, you've got the sales analytics dashboard, which gives you a nice, really clean look at exactly how well your business is performing. You can see a profit overview, all of your expenses, and then your revenue, your profit, and your expenses, and you can kind of break all those things down into great detail, which isn't as specific to launching, but it's just super important for your business just to be able to know how your business is performing at any given time. So I would definitely say there's a lot of tools in there that can help you with your product launch. I don't know if I've missed any, but
I think you covered it. That was, yeah, definitely use Jungle Scout for your product launch. But then again, as Lenny said, you can use the tools like review automation to continue on after launch. So yeah.
I mean, I could keep going. Like there's also the rank tracker, which I didn't mention, because one of the important things as well is that you're climbing up the ranks or the search rankings for your top keywords. So in the rank tracker, you can just follow your progress. So when you start launching, you can be tracking and see, where am I ranked for dog mats? And then as you're getting more sales and reviews and using PPC and doing all these other strategies, you can watch over time how that ranking is changing. So you can see whether your efforts are actually successful at bumping up your search rankings or not. And all the tools that I've mentioned are all included within the Jungle Scout membership, just for one monthly price, which you can see at junglescout.com. So yes, definitely check that one out. All right, so let's maybe take one or two more questions here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one.
All right, so Carl asked a good question, and it's, can you plan inventory restock lead time in Jungle Scout?
Yeah, you absolutely can. So going back to all the tools that Jungle Scout has, we have one called Inventory Manager. And long story short, you just need to input 2 pieces of data in. You need to input in your lead time, which is how long does it take from the moment you place an order to that product being live on Amazon. That might be 60 days. At the moment, it might be more like 70 or 80, 90 days, but you put in how long it takes for an order to be completed. Then you also put in the reorder days of supply. This is how long you want to be in stock. So rule of thumb here, whatever your lead time is, you want your reorder days of stock, of supply to be at least another 30 days or more. So if your lead time is 60 days, I would make your reorder days of supply at least 90 days, okay? So that means it takes 60 days to get a shipment in, and then you wanna order in 90 days worth of stock, okay? So you put in those 2 things, and then Jungle Scout will look at your sales history, and you can look at it over the past 15 days, so short-term sales, or 30 days or longer. So depending on the sales history that you look at, Jungle Scout will just tell you to either reorder now or reorder soon. It will even tell you the date that you need to reorder, and it will tell you how many units you need to reorder. So it's pretty sophisticated, and yeah, it's I'm just double checking that I covered it all. So can you plan inventory restock lead time? Yes, so long story short, you absolutely can.
Awesome, well.
Yeah, let's take maybe like one more question.
Okay. This might be a fun one here. I don't think we actually know the answer to it.
Yeah,
but it
we
could
could
be,
just speculate.
Yeah, I think this is actually a really fun conversation to have. And Vince asks, any thoughts on the Amazon stores that are opening, and will they stock third-party sellers' products? I think that's super exciting. I don't think we know yet. That's a very new piece of information for all of us. So ideally, that would be really cool if you can start getting your products in Amazon stores as well. But yeah, I think that's going to be a very big piece of information that's going to affect a lot of sellers, and not just the big players in the industry. So
yeah, I don't really have any thoughts. I'm still just kind of processing it and thinking, I'm just super curious to see what happens. I don't have any thoughts. I didn't necessarily see that one coming, but the thought of Amazon physical stores is super interesting, and don't have any thoughts yet, but really keen to see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out, especially for products that are like under $20, under $10 especially. It's really hard to ship products that have very small margins, especially products that are under $10, under $20. I know that's something we preach here, is to try to find a product upwards of $20, just factoring in all the fees, and of course shipping is one of those. And could be very interesting to see how it plays out for the products under $10. So yeah, we're going to keep our eye on that.
Absolutely. Alrighty, well, we wrap it up there for today. I hope you've all got a lot of value from the presentation and also from the Q&A. So thank you so much for joining. Make sure to give us a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this content, or even subscribe if you're not already. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.